Welcome to the Macro Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
I know we haven't even reached the midpoint of 2024, and Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference is in a few weeks, but we're already seeing unofficial reports on some of Apple's plans for 2025. So we're going to talk about some of those reports on today's show.
It's funny, 2025 feels like the first year that Apple Car is supposed to come, right?
Right.
Way
or
back.
a foldable iPhone.
It seemed at the time so far away, but I feel like 2025 was the year. All this stuff was going to happen, and guess what? It ain't. We're not getting it.
Yeah, 4 years ago, it was our foldable iPhone was going to come.
That too, yeah. 2025, 2030 were the 2 years. Everything is going to be great.
That's how you do predictions,
the new chip in the iPad Air.
The best way to do predictions is to put them so far in the future that everyone forgets by that time, and that you can just go, "Oh, their plans changed." Sure, of course.
Yeah, I think we were hoping that by this time next year, we would be talking about how we mounted our foldable iPhones into the Apple Car,
right?
And how it charged.
Yeah. And wearing our Apple glasses and all that stuff. We can go back and compile all that stuff. And, 25, 27, it's all around now.
Yeah.
When we were expecting all these revolutionary breakthroughs, and guess what? It's hard to deliver that stuff. I don't doubt that they were working on them. It's just some of it is just not capable of being done for less than $25,000 or some crazy price.
Yeah, some of it runs into just some physics issues where you can't software engineer your way around certain physics issues. You have to develop new materials or new processes and stuff that's not easy and fast.
Yeah.
And it doesn't replicate well. Software is once you solve the problem once, it's solved for everyone. Yeah. And then, so physical stuff is hard. Before we get into the specific predictions, I think that you bring up a good point about how when we look into the future, we always fail to foresee the thing that's going to actually change. So if you go back to 2018 and everybody was saying, by 2025 there's going to be a self-driving car and a foldable phone and a whatever, and we had AI at that time. Google had just introduced transformer networks, but we had not had our ChatGPT moment. AI was not good. It wasn't part of the public consciousness. People weren't using it. They weren't making South Park episodes about it. We completely missed that would happen. Everybody just kind of thought it would make your car drive itself, and nobody really realized the broad implications of it makes art and tells you anything about anything in the world and talks and writes for you and all that. So, all we wanted was a Siri that sounded smarter and understood us better in a self-driving car, and we kind of missed this whole idea of what AI could be and transform everything. And it transformed the whole tech industry. Since
almost overnight.
It's been about 2 years since sort of ChatGPT, the first versions of DALL-E, stuff like that. And now it's literally every major tech company, the 5 big tech companies in the world, has to define themselves as an AI company. Microsoft had a big event. They're having their big build event now, and they had a big event yesterday to introduce what they call Copilot plus PCs, because Copilot is their brand for their AI thing. And it's literally all about AI. It's about AI on the edge. It requires processors with these big NPUs that are faster than even Apple's and stuff. There was a lot of cool stuff. It was their first compelling ARM laptop with good performance, good software in terms of ARM compatibility and incredible battery life, and all they could talk about was AI. All the AI things.
And Google just had its event last week. I think it was last week, and same thing. 150 mentions of AI, and next month is WWDC.
NVIDIA, Intel,
same
AMD,
thing. Yeah.
Facebook, or I mean Meta, whatever. Meta was all about connecting people. Then the social network got uninteresting, and they thought they were going to be the leaders in VR, and VR was going to take over the world. And now the second it got to be AI, they're an AI company. That's what it is. So we got to always be careful when we sort of predict as we're talking about next year products and we're predicting out to the future. We have to understand that probably for next year, we have a good solid bet on it's still going to be all about AI, and we're going to hear a lot about these things. But as you start to predict further in the future, you run afoul of those issues where you miss the hard left turns that that the world always takes, and everything becomes about that.
Yeah, we're going to hear that, the start of that at the very least next month at WWDC. And as Jason says, that's going to permeate everything. Vision Pro, Apple Watch, iPhone, iPad, Mac. I don't know if AI is the thing that's going to last. It seems as though it's going to. It's certainly better because so many businesses, and not even just tech businesses, but so many businesses are using it or some version of or some form of it to, in their businesses, in their products, and they're kind of building it into the next generation of whatever they're doing, whether it's cars or, movie studios. So it's got to keep developing and evolving.
It's often because they feel like they have to. It doesn't actually solve a problem or make it better.
It was so easy to implement. It's already here it is. It's kind of done.
Yeah.
All you got to do is take this little bit of code and do something with it, and voila, all this magical stuff gets spit out. And we've kind of reached already, and it was very quick, this point of no return where AI is here to stay in some form or another.
Yep. So when we talk about next year's the rumors so far for next year's, they mostly concern things about supply chain and stuff. So you're going to hear about hardware, but I think it's safe to say that from a software point of view, we're going to hear about a transformation to AI starting at WWDC for this year's releases at the end of this year. But you're going to see that continue through 2025, where you're going to see all those features get better, new features brought on board, and things where, we're hearing about Apple will have all these AI features, but they're going to work with somebody like OpenAI for a chatbot or something,
which they've done
other
before.
Companies to shore up things. And I think they're going to want to quickly move away from that to their own technology. I don't think they want to get stuck in the Google Maps situation where it took too long for them to realize they needed their own maps, and then they didn't have they tried to do it too quickly, and they messed it up, and they took too long to fix it, and they had to do a whole new architecture. I think hopefully they've learned their lesson, and they're like, okay, stopgap, we work with somebody outside, but we've got a plan to move.
As Jason mentioned, the rumors that you always hear about new products tend to come from the supply chain. So they're usually hardware based. So we're not going to hear a lot of rumors about AI, since that's a lot of software involved.
There's general rumors about what Apple is doing. There's a rumor that there's a new Mac OS calculator. There's a rumor of various things that are built into. But for the most part, that's all going to be a bit of a surprise at WWDC. As Roman says, there's no supply chain for software. That's developed in Apple Park somewhere. And for it to leak, someone has to literally call up a reporter or someone and say, hey, I saw this thing. There's no layers. There's nowhere for it to go. So
as we're talking this show about 2025 and the releases that year, the monkey wrench in the works that could make things very different that we don't necessarily foresee could be some of the things that Apple may need to do because of antitrust regulations and lawsuits and so on. They're already in the EU have to do a bunch of things. They did a bunch of things. they're being sued for not doing them right and not meeting the letter of the law there. But there are other countries where and regions where they're either being investigated, sued, or there are laws being written now that they're going to have to change the way they operate for. So that might be one of the big changes you see.
So a lot of these software changes and these new AI features, they might be running on a new iPhone that we could see in 2025. And this iPhone isn't just an update to what we have now. There's rumors that Apple is coming out with a slimmer, redesigned model.
Yeah.
At least one of them would be
It's
slimmer.
an interesting rumor in the sense that it sounds like the iPhone 16 would exist in, as you know, that form factor would exist in the iPhone 17 in the sense that it'll be a slight update. And then this other model will come out that'll be different, kind of like the iPhone 10. So when the iPhone 10 came out, the iPhone 8 existed, and that was the update. And then there was this.
Yeah, there was an 8 and 8 Plus that had the same processor and stuff. And then the 10 was this new thing with,
you know, and
OLED. It
was clear that the 8 wasn't long for this world, and that by the next year, maybe then the following, it turned out to be the next year, that's all that Apple was going to sell. So it sounds like they're doing something similar, at least based on the rumors. And we've heard this a couple of times now, that there will be a model separate from the other models, probably more expensive, that looks quite a bit different. So
people have been calling it iPhone Ultra. Some of the rumors have said
Slim.
It's just going to be the iPhone Pro Max, but that it's going to be whatever. I think some of it is they've learned some manufacturing tricks and techniques from the new iPads, the new iPad Pros, that to make them thinner, that they're going to apply to the iPhones. I worry about battery life for this. Every time I see a rumor about this, I check social media and everyone's replying going, man, I don't care. Make it thicker. Yeah. Get rid of the battery. Give it me more battery and get rid of the bump, the camera bump. Like, I don't need it to be thinner. Yeah. I don't care. I'm not buying it because it's thinner. But it's impressive. It's a flex. It looks cool.
Yeah.
I am concerned about the camera bump. What are they get even bigger? Camera protrusion?
Yeah, I mean, all those are questions. And I mean, I don't think there's any technology out there to make the camera 3 or 4 millimeters smaller than it is now.
Yeah,
so,
not at the same focal lengths and all that other kind of stuff. Right. You run into just geometry. They already have really impressive little lenses to try and make this work. But the one of the rumors is instead of being all arranged in a corner on the back, they're going to be in the center. Yeah, maybe across the middle or something like that. That would at least help keep it from being wobbly when you put it down.
Yeah, but I always hated that about the iPhone. It's weird because Apple is so into symmetry. It's strange that they've done that corner camera forever. That's just what they've done. Google has a nice little solution for that with that camera bar, so it could rest on a table. It goes across the whole thing, and I like that. They fit a couple cameras in there. Yeah, I like that too. I don't know. I highly doubt they would copy that, but maybe something similar. Mm-hmm. I assume 3 cameras if it's a Pro model, but maybe not, because they say that it might not be a Pro model. It might be a different generation. So maybe it won't have 3 cameras. I don't know. But it will be more expensive. That's what everybody says. More expensive than the Pro Max, but possibly with the smaller screen, somewhere around 6.5 inches, whereas the Pro Max has a 6.7 inch screen. So,
and possible changes to the front camera. We alternately hear rumors that it's going to have camera under the display, that it's not still going to have a punch hole. The punch hole's going to be smaller. It'll have a dynamic island. It won't. These rumors change from day to day.
And we're still over a year away. So
it was well over a year away. We still have to go through the iPhone 16 models. a lot of this stuff could be stuff they're planning to do, and they don't start manufacturing till like the summer. So they've got a lot of time to determine that they couldn't work out the issue that they were having with bringing this to market, and then they to scrap it and do something else. So
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to do the tandem OLED display thing that they just did in the iPad Pros.
That's
more brightness with less power, but
yeah.
a lot more cost. So,
I mean, it does sound like they're going to take a page from the iPad Pro. You know, that's the thinness is there, the battery life is there, the screen is there, all that high end stuff that we're talking about. So, and the chip would probably be something similar to the M4 at this point. Assuming the A18 is based on the M3. Or no, am I a generation behind here?
yeah, you're a generation off. The M4 would be more or less based on the same
A18.
chip that you had, the 18 that you have in the iPhone 15 Pro.
So it would be an M5 then.
So it would be something like an M5. We'll get the iPhone's been at the forefront of bringing the new core designs, neural engines, video processors. They've been the first, and there's nothing in the M4 that makes me think, oh, that's not in your iPhone 15 Pro, but just with more cores and so.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see this, not to bring it back to 2024, but the whole A chip and M chip, if they unify that when they release the next iPhone, if they decide to call it an M series, in keeping with the whole branding thing. But I mean, it's just nomenclature. It's just a label at this point.
Yeah, it is weird because they had A because it was an application processor.
Right.
Way back when they started doing this. And then M because they were kind of, that's the Mac versions. But now those aren't just used in the Macs. They started putting them in iPads. They're going to end up putting an M3 or something in some future Apple TV because they keep making those more powerful for some reason. So then what will that be? Like, I don't know. It's the names are not necessarily useful anymore.
Well, speaking of the M3 and M4, we were all kind of wondering if Apple was going to update the Mac Studio and Mac Pro with an M3. And according to a report by Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, Apple does not have the Mac Studio, Mac Pro on the schedule of its releases for 2024. It has it on its schedule for mid-2025, which seems to indicate they're going to skip the M series altogether for those two Macs.
The M3, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, sure. It just seems strange to me that market, all they care about is the latest chip. Like, that's it. Yet, that's the one that you're going to skip.
And
we don't
ports
need an
and
M3
stuff,
MacBook Air.
Ports and
People are going to buy
displays.
it.
Yeah.
The Mac Studio.
But it's also really hard to make the Max and Ultra versions of these chips. You know,
well, that's what we've heard is that they're
and
going
I
to
think
change
that's-
the way they process those to make it, I guess,
yeah,
easier to
it could be that
manufacture.
they're made differently. That the Ultras aren't two of them sandwiched together. It's more like one big chip or something. You know, it could be something like that. It could just be these 3-nanometer processes that are coming in hot. It's hard to make gigantic chips with it. But it does sound like they're going to skip M3, Max, Ultra, everything. And the products that get those things are going to be waiting on an M4 Pro, Max, Ultra set. We haven't heard the same thing about MacBooks. So MacBooks will probably, at least some MacBooks will get those M4s this year.
Yeah, Gurman's earlier reports said that there was going to be an M4 update to the MacBook Pros the second half of this year, probably for the holiday season.
They have the M4 for the iPad. So it's, that they can do the Air pretty
At
soon.
any time they want,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that really changes. I'm sure people are buying M2 Airs for $9.99 and M1 Airs at Walmart for $6.99, just as much as they're buying M3 Airs. I mean, they're all good. So I'm not sure they need to rush to the M4 more like the Pro machines more so, where those people are a little more demanding and a little more interested in the latest and greatest chip.
Yeah, but if you want a Mac Studio, you're in a weird conundrum now because you essentially have to wait a year or invest in an
you're
M2.
getting a 2-generation-old processor at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still a good one. The M2
Right.
Max, M2 Ultra, they're great processors, but technically, you're 2 generations behind. I mean, it's odd that Apple kind of painted themselves into this corner when they run the show. You could always blame it on Intel back in the day, like, oh, well, Intel doesn't have the power thing. The power
Right.
requires me want, or like you make it. You chose not to put that into the Mac Studio. You choose to charge $2,000, and in the Mac Pro case, $6,000 for a chip that's, good, but not current.
Well, now Apple can just blame its chip manufacturer, TSMC.
That's right.
They'll just pass the buck to them.
Apple's maybe under some pressure to get an M4 MacBook Air out because there's Microsoft just announced a lot of I don't know, 30 laptops or something made by all their partners that use this new Snapdragon X Elite chip, and they're promising better performance than the M3 Airs, the 15-inch M3 Airs. They caveat it, better sustained performance, so it's, your short benchmark will be faster on the M3, but like a long-term 10, 15-minute multi-threaded thing, they'll come out ahead. But also, they're killing it on battery life, finally, and they're in the ballpark. And then next month, Intel is announcing their chip with things coming out this fall that's supposed to be better than that. They're promising better than that. So in that thin and light, between $1,000 to $1,500 laptop range, it's been a while, but it looks like Apple's got some competition.
Yeah, it took a while. It took, 4 years now? But yeah.
Yeah. And
sure.
Certainly if they stay on M3, they're going to have a hard time looking like, I don't think people care. I think people buy a Mac because they want a Mac, not because
I
it's
agree with
the
that.
fastest or whatever. But Apple likes to crow about being the fastest, and they're going to have to get an M4 MacBook Air out.
Yep.
If they want to do that. So there's some pressure. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me if they announced M4 MacBook Airs at WWDC. Just the Air.
That would surprise me. Those just came out in March, man. That would be crazy.
Yeah, but there's now M4 iPad Pros. They're the M4s.
Yeah, no, I
are
know,
out.
but they better have some kind of a replacement program lined up if they come out with a better one 3 months later.
And it would seem kind of weird, even though it's not the same, that the M4 MacBook Air would come out before any M4 MacBook Pros.
Yeah, the whole thing is bizarre now that they came out with the M4 and they should have just come out with like the M3i or something. Like that's all they had to do was just rename it. And everybody it would have made sense. Now it's like, well, there's a 4 there and a 3 here, and these have 2s. It's like it's
Yeah. It is all weird. Jumping out that iPad Pro with the M4 really kind of changed the schedule.
Yeah.
Changed the expectations. It's going to be weird. It's weird not to have, if you have the chip there. I can see why you have to wait for the Pro and the Max versions for the MacBook Pros, but if you have the M4, you can update the Air, and I feel weird buying an M3 MacBook Air when there's an M4 in the iPad Pro for the next 6 months.
at least.
Well, we just got new iPad Pros, but maybe those aren't the ones you're waiting for. Maybe you're waiting for an iPad Mini. And it sounds like, though, you might have to keep waiting for a while.
Well, this is another weird one because the rumors say, and I believe them, it's going to get a new chip. And that is basically it. It's kind of like what they did to the iPad Air. It got a new chip. It got a new name. It does not have an 11-inch screen. It is the same 10.9-inch screen as before. Apple just says it's 11 inches.
Call it 11,
And it got slightly different colors. And that's really it. That's what the Mini's going to get. And the Mini doesn't need anything else. It's fine. Mm-hmm. But why not just come out with it last week alongside the Air and say, okay, now it has an 16 or 17, whatever processor you want to give it, and end it. But they didn't do that. They love to mess with the iPad Mini schedule. That's Apple's thing. It used to be every September they came out with a new one until like 2018, and they're like, we're just gonna throw it in the throw caution to the wind. When we feel like it, we're gonna come out with one.
Yeah, Mark Gurman at Bloomberg again, he reported that it'll come out at the earliest at the end of this year.
Yeah. Which I wouldn't be
yes.
surprised if it was tacked on to the iPhone event or the Mac event, if there is one in November or something.
Yeah, it is curious as to what's holding it up.
And it's also one of those things where if somebody wanted one, I'd be like, yeah, go ahead, buy one, because you're not going to miss out on much. It's not, you're getting a great
what
tablet.
you care about is the size.
Yeah, right.
That's
the
why
chip
you're
is plenty
buying
good.
the Mini.
The price is going to be the same. So yeah, go ahead, buy one. Even though it's almost 2 years old, that's fine.
What else is coming next year, Roman? Or do we
So
think?
the last rumor that we've got was about the AirTag. I know everybody's anxious about when the new AirTag's coming out.
I know, everyone needs to know.
And again, Mark Gurman reported that AirTag is probably going to come out the middle of next year. Actually, I think it was Ming-Chi Kuo reported a couple months ago that Apple had scheduled it for later this year, but then they decided to push it to next year. And then Mark Gurman he added a little more detail saying that the change in it is going to be essentially what sounds like the updated UWB chip that they refused to call the U2 chip for, I think for certain reasons.
Scare
I don't want to get
everybody
sued by
into
Bono.
or just scare all their customers into thinking they're going to get another
Right.
undesired U2 album.
Yeah, a new AirTag's coming out. I don't know if it's worth waiting for it. I mean, maybe the chip.
Absolutely is. Based on what he's saying, no way. I mean, the things that it needs, which is a keyring hole, for one. Number two, maybe a secondary form factor that you can put into a wallet or slide into like a passport thing or something. That's probably not coming. So it's going to be basically the same thing with a new ultra wideband chip, which, okay, great. I mean, that's useful, but I mean, there's no reason to not buy one now if you want one, and maybe better battery life, but it lasts like a year, so that's fine. It's fine. Yeah, if you want one, buy one. They're usually like $80 for four of them on Amazon, which that's a great price. You get four. You can put one in a bag, one in your wherever you want to keep them, and that's basically everything you would need. Four should cover everything that you want to track. I think that's a good amount.
There have been a couple of other products not assumed for next year that are just sort of older rumors. Things like AirPods Max. Max was originally they were thinking maybe this year. Now it looks like it's not coming this year.
It's the most insane thing that Apple sells a pair of $550 headphones that haven't been updated in almost 4 years.
Yeah,
that still have a lightning port and still miss out on newer features that
things
are
about. Originally, it was just the update was just going to be basically USB-C and not much else. But now, as time goes on, they kind of have to update the technology more and maybe some more of the design. Who knows? We're not really expecting new AirPods Pro this year, but there is expected to be a new AirPods to kind of take away to kind of fit a new cheap AirPods so they can finally stop selling second gen AirPods, like old second gen AirPods which they still sell, and just the basic AirPods, and just kind of fill in that gap. They want to replace both of those with some other affordable, what they would just call AirPods, but a new gen, fifth gen at this point, fourth gen, whatever. So that's the only thing that really expecting this year. But I'd be shocked if 2025 came and went. There were no new AirPods Pro by that point.
Yeah,
and maybe AirPods.
That's Max. Probably their biggest seller at this point, and they want to
either that or the regular AirPods, which is what they're trying to kind of get a boost up to. And those are supposed to have a new design and everything. So
yeah. And then there's going to be allegedly a budget model for under $100 that replaces the AirPods 2 that they still sell.
Right. Potentially, yeah. Either that or this new. It's either two models or it's one model that's meant to. They're going to get rid of the cheaper one and bump up the price a little, and it's going to be one thing that fits between them. It's hard to tell, but that's the only thing we're expecting this year. That means Pro and Max probably are going to get updated next year. There's always this rumors about HomePod. HomePod's been sitting around doing nothing forever, but there's a rumor for a next gen HomePod, whatever it is, that may have a screen on it, may have a dock where you put like an iPad on it. It's alternating kind of rumors on that, but that's expected next year.
Yep.
We hear that this timetable keeps changing, but the latest timetable for a successor to the Vision Pro is late 2025. So second half
that'll
of next
be over.
year. And that's not glasses. It's just a new Vision Pro, and some rumors say kind of they'll do two. They'll do another Vision Pro, and they'll do an Apple Vision or Vision Air or whatever they call it. That's a more affordable version that delivers a lesser experience in some way, but then they'll have a new high-end model as well. But basically no new Apple Vision hardware until at least 2025, and the earliest rumors say back half of 2025 or some update, and glasses are still a couple of years beyond that.
Yeah, that's another one I'm interested in WWDC to see what Vision OS 2 brings to the table.
I was hoping for big things. The only rumor I've heard about it is a they didn't call it a maintenance release. I think they called it it was like a catch-up release or something like that. But it's missing a lot of kind of obvious features, and it's missing a lot of stuff for developers that it's frameworks and stuff like that don't work the way developers want them to. There's a lot of language stuff that they need to do for international rollouts and stuff, and Vision OS 2 is going to be mostly that. So if you're expecting a big UI changes and massive feature updates, you're not going to get that. You're mostly going to get things to keep it Messenger in line with Messenger on the iPhone and all those things, but it's not going to be the big overhaul that you're hoping for. That's not going to be next year, but that's another thing for next year.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 885. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
And thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, or through any other podcast app. Do you have any comments or questions? Send us an email at podcast@macworld.com, or contact us through X, that's @Macworld, or on Threads, that's @Macworld_HQ, or on the Macworld Facebook page. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.